Thomas Jefferson was one of the most intellectually curious individuals among the founding fathers. He spent much of his life reading widely across different fields such as science, history, law, philosophy, agriculture, religion, and languages. He believed that a well-informed mind was necessary to create a good government. He owned one of the largest personal libraries in early America, which included many books from Europe, and several of them were written in Latin, Greek, French, and Arabic. Jefferson was interested in studying not only Western texts, but also works that gave him insight into Eastern cultures, religions, and laws. Among these was the Quran, the Holy Book of Islam, which he purchased in 1765 while still a young man studying law. This was 11 years before he began drafting the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson bought a 2-volume English translation of the Quran by George Sale. This version was first published in London in 1734. The translation was not written from a religious perspective but from a scholarly one. It was meant for European readers who were interested in understanding Islamic law, customs, and beliefs. The introduction to the translation included a detailed commentary on Islamic law, theology, political structures, and culture. George Sale's translation also included notes about how Islamic law was structured, how the legal and religious systems worked together, and how Islam interacted with politics, society, and the responsibilities of rulers. These topics were of interest to Jefferson because he was thinking deeply about how to create a system of government that would be based on reason, human rights, and natural law. Jefferson did not study the Quran to become a Muslim or adopt Islamic beliefs. He studied it because he believed that a person who wanted to understand the world must study many different ideas, including those from cultures outside of Europe. At the time, the Quran was studied by European Enlightenment thinkers because it provided a different example of how law, religion, and government could be organized. Jefferson was deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinking, which encouraged examining all sources of knowledge to better understand human nature and political organization. This is why he read not just the Bible and classical Roman texts but also the Quran and other works from outside the Christian tradition. He wanted to compare different systems of law and moral reasoning. When Jefferson read the Quran, he was exposed to Islamic ideas about justice, equality before God, and the responsibilities of rulers. The Quran included discussions about the limits of authority, the duties of leaders to act with fairness, and the rights of people to be treated with dignity. While Jefferson did not copy these ideas directly, they were part of the broader body of knowledge he was examining. He used this knowledge to help shape his own understanding of human rights and government. In the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson argued that all men are created equal and that governments get their power from the consent of the governed. These ideas were not taken from one single source but were based on extensive study of many traditions, including the Greco-Roman world, Enlightenment philosophers, Christian writings, and the Islamic world. Jefferson believed in religious freedom, and he worked hard to make sure the United States would not have a state religion. He did not want the government to control religion or for religion to control government. His study of the Quran helped him better understand why religious freedom was important. In Islamic history, there were examples of religious tolerance as well as examples of religious control. Jefferson examined these and compared them with Christian history and other models of law. His goal was to design a country where individuals could follow their conscience without interference from the government. Jefferson's decision to study the Quran was also part of a larger effort to understand international relations. At the time, the United States was concerned about its future role in global trade and diplomacy. The Barbary states of North Africa, which were Muslim territories, were part of ongoing diplomatic and military concerns for the young republic. Jefferson believed it was essential to understand the legal and religious thinking of these regions to negotiate fairly and effectively. His reading of the Quran was not just philosophical but also practical. He wanted to understand how the people and governments of the Muslim world thought about law, contracts, war, peace, and leadership. There is no direct line between any specific verse of the Quran and the text of the Declaration of Independence. However, Jefferson's exposure to the Quran added to his understanding of universal principles such as justice, human dignity, and moral reasoning. These themes appear in many traditions, and Jefferson's goal was to identify those principles that could be shared across cultures and religions. This helped him build a political philosophy that aimed to be rational, fair, and universal in its application. Jefferson's study of the Quran was not an isolated event but part of a lifelong habit of wide reading and careful comparison. His library included works from Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and secular authors. He believed that truth could be found in many places, and that the best way to serve humanity was to learn from as many sources as possible. His intellectual method was based on critical thinking, comparison, and careful reasoning. He did not accept ideas blindly. He compared them and then used what he believed was true and useful. The Quran was one of many texts he examined with this method. By the time Jefferson began writing the Declaration of Independence in 1776, he had already spent more than a decade thinking deeply about the foundations of human freedom, the responsibilities of government, and the natural rights of individuals. His reading of the Quran contributed to the broader set of ideas that helped him define what freedom meant, what justice required, and how a government should treat its people. The Quran was not his main source, but it was part of the larger intellectual environment that shaped his thinking. His willingness to read and consider texts from many cultures, including Islamic sources, reflects his belief that the human search for truth does not belong to any one tradition alone. Subscribe to explore more of America's history.